Hello everyone and welcome to a little fun Victoria 3 video. On the Victoria 3 Discord, the devs can be quite active, talking in general chat with people, giving tidbits of information, and in some cases even providing little mini AARs or after action reports. And this one's pretty fun. You may have seen, if you're on the Victoria 3 subreddit, that there was an image of a bearded Korean baby posted round a bit, and it's got quite heavily upvoted. And you know, a bearded baby is something. It's quite something. So Neon DT decided to share a bit of the story behind how he got the bearded baby, and that's what I want to share with you today, because it's kind of fun. So how about we look at the bearded baby? Currently playing as Korea. To clarify something I said earlier, tributary subjects do not automatically join your market in the current build, though I did voluntarily join the Chinese market as they have stuff that I want. Such as opium? Everything really. I don't need to worry about most of my basic needs and can focus on having more specialized economy, where I sell luxuries to rich Chinese pops. Of course, that does put all my eggs into one basket, and this will fail massively if China collapses. I'd have to find a large economic power that would want me in their customs union. Right now, China is my only option, but I'm sure things will change later in the game. Niels asks, why would a country refuse you joining their market? My impression was that the bigger my customs union, the better. So one advantage of China over anyone else, though, is the sheer quantities of basic resources they produce. And yes and no. Sometimes a bigger market just means more mouths to fill. It's situational. You have more economic power, but that comes with economic responsibility. So if there's a market with not enough food, they won't be thrilled if another non-self-feeder joins the market. Exactly. You ideally want countries in your customs union that either make something you want or want something you have. So a valid strategy would be to specialize yourself on a certain much sought after project and offer it to the highest bidder. Absolutely, I'm currently doing that with my luxury clothing. Being part of the Chinese market, I have a huge amount of silk, so I'm using that to make luxury clothes and selling it back to China, which also helps me industrialize and change the makeup of my pops. Can you sell your luxury cloths to other markets even though you aren't the market leader? No. The market leader handles all foreign trade, which is a bit of a tidbit that I don't think we were totally aware of. If I was China, this would be the part where I would be getting annoyed with you. You buying cheap and selling expensive. What's in it for me? Well, you get luxury clothes for your pops, saving you the trouble of diversifying your industry. You can use your money on developing something else that's more important to you. It's symbiotic. Good to know. If you would produce more luxury clothing than I need, could I export it to a foreign market? Well, you certainly could. And that would be great for me because my clothes factories would become more profitable due to higher demand. Shouldn't the AI try to produce the profitable goods themselves if they have the rare materials to do so? Why does AI China not produce expensive luxury clothes themselves if the nation has plenty of silk? Well, they certainly could. But they also have many other pop needs that need to balance since they have millions of pops. Making luxury clothes isn't that high on the priority list compared to, say, making sure there's enough rice for everyone to eat. I would really like to avoid going to war in my Korea game. My military is pathetic. China and Japan would murder me in a heartbeat if they tried. That's why I'm happy to be a Chinese tributary. I should start thinking about maybe not being a feudal backwater. I'll establish a university. Could really use some currency standards too. Oh right, I should have some schools. Guess I'll go with religious schools since the monks are very powerful and would support it. So what interest groups do you have in power? Right now, I've got the landowners and the monks. Oh right, I forgot that I made philosopher kings overpowered. Should tone that down. But for now, I'll exploit it. So it's not that you are going to play Korea, so you made it intentionally overpowered for your game. Nah. Any country that doesn't start out with a large university can get this. Currency standards acquired. Now I probably need to focus on production tech. Eventually I'll run out of infrastructure and will need trains, and I've got a lot of tech to catch up on before I can get them. I know how to make steel. Korea is a little behind, and universities are expensive. Perhaps I should tax grain. Ah! I got schools. Thanks, monks. Actually, instead of taxing grain, it would be more efficient to just directly increase taxes on the peasantry. There's not really any political will right now to reform the status of the peasantry. Neil says, ram it through for the good of the country. Can you do it with negative costs, or is it simply impossible? Well, I eventually want to introduce an income tax, but that will take time and will annoy people. Taxes always do. It would definitely cause civil war at this point. Landowners like things the way they are, and they are very powerful. Eventually, industrialization will change the makeup of society such that landowners aren't so incredibly powerful, and then I'll be able to push through some less feudal reforms, but for now I'm stuck where I am on that front. Good luck enslaving the proletariat. Worse idea than enslaving peasants. Speaking of, who would be enslaved if you implemented slavery right now? Initially, nobody. We'd import, I assume that means import. We'd import slaves, unless we implemented debt slavery, in which case we'd enslave the poor, which is kind of unnecessary since almost everyone is already a serf. My largest city is currently Pyongyang. As GDP is now a thing, do we have charts in which we can see where our GDP comes from, like 17% textile mills and so on? If so, which are the 3 biggest contributors to your GDP right now? So, he doesn't think there's a detailed GDP breakdown, but my new luxury clothes and luxury furniture factories are the greatest contributors to the recent increases. Alright, I'm going to take a risk. Let's introduce a payroll tax. It occurs to me that my current industrialization efforts have created a capitalist class that is fervently opposed to my taxation policy. They've created a movement to oppose my law, but so far they're not too angry, and they're only at 16% support. What is the biggest interest group not currently in the government? The monks. I kicked them out because I don't need them to enact my education reforms anymore. Replace them with the army, who support my tax reforms. Monks are fine with being kicked out of government. Passing the law they liked made them very loyal. I need to keep the landowners in government, though. They can't afford to annoy them. And I'm never going to pass a law they approve of. So how many Chinese migrants are you getting as Korea? None. My borders are closed. I would like to open them one day, but that is low on the priority list. Assuming your pops are much richer than the Chinese, would it not mean a mass immigration would happen once you open them? So my pops are only slightly richer on average compared to the Chinese average. Oh, and also my laws are super racist. Chinese pops are more likely to move to larger Chinese cities. Best move is to enact super progressive rainbow laws like the Flash and use the army to crush any disagreement and become the beacon of progressivism and development in Asia. So I want to expand my schools, but I need bureaucracy, which is expensive. Really hope my tax laws pass. And that will most definitely not work. The guy who was writing my tax laws died. The petty bourgeoisie have become pretty powerful, considering changing my government to them and the industrialists, then passing an anti-feudalism laws. My tax law passed, I am now very wealthy. Time to totally reform society. So are there any downsides to taxing the elites and using the money to help the peasants? Yes. The elites will hate you, and they typically have a lot of political power. With my new tax laws, I can set taxes to minimum and still have a positive balance. So what is your relationship with China now? A tributary, certainly, but is there a tendency towards something? So things are stable. Relations are good because I've been boosting them. It's partially due to the fact that I don't have a lot of the expenses that more developed countries have, and I want to take on those expenses to develop my economy and society. Tax income is nice, but you really ought to be using it to grow your GDP and appease your pops. So can you still run the economy in a market fashion by having low taxes and using pop money to fund expansion? You certainly can, but that money can only be invested into certain things. So the more Korea industrializes now, the more we can withstand the pressure of Beijing and Kyoto. Invest, invest, invest. Stocks only go up. Big stonks. Easy there, I still have less than 1/10 of China's GDP. I'm making ground on Japan, though, almost at half. Excellent, excellent. We are still a monarchy, right, Daniel? Please tell me that our eternal right to rule is as true today as it was 100 years ago. It is. Abolishing the monarchy would be a pretty bad idea right now. The monarchy is giving us much-needed legitimacy to pass laws. Korea is not ready for democracy. Maybe in a decade. The way Daniel is describing it, Korea sounds more like a second Siam right now than a second Japan. Yeah, that's more or less how I'm playing this. Only thing that's missing is Western powers taking an interest in what I'm doing. We are just barely below the threshold for a revolution. I'm abolishing serfdom. The landowners are angry. It occurs to me that this would be an excellent time to use my tax money to double military salaries, just in case. I want the generals on my side. I've also centralized the power of the armed forces in the capital and reduced their presence in the countryside where the landowners are powerful. Yes, serfdom is abolished. I think I should now not pass any more dangerous reforms for a little while. I could open up my economy, Nobody has strong feelings about transitioning from isolationism to agrarianism. It's not a big jump, but it makes my tech spread less terrible. Or people would actually support landed voting. Actually, no. I want to keep the monarchy for now. Landed voting could have unforeseen consequences. People might vote for things that I don't like. One consequence of abolishing serfdom: subsistent farms are now producing less grain due to not being forced to hand over their grain to the aristocracy. This has slightly increased food prices. Thankfully, I'm in the Chinese market, so this is barely noticeable. Wouldn't serfs leave the land when freed and go into urban areas? Yes. I expect that social mobility will increase, but I'm industrializing anyway, so should have plenty of jobs for them. And Paul comes in. Serfs would not leave all at once. If there is no promise of better employment elsewhere, they may stay, but just be independent and self-serving. Sure. We'll probably want to enact poor laws once the migration gets overwhelming, though. Oh no! I looked away on speed 5 and there's a revolution! There's always a lag effect of available jobs in the city reaching out to rural areas in the country. I have a solution. I got this. I'll see if they raise an army I can't beat. If they do, I'll just get China to help. One barbarian. Paul, what's the worst campaign you've had so far? Was there one where just everything went wrong? My worst campaign was where I wanted nothing but a peaceful game as the Sikhs. And the, BIC? British? No? I don't know what BIC is. British India Company? Maybe? I don't know. They were incredibly aggressive. Ended up burning so much of my native pop base in defense against the BIC and the UK alone. It had consequences, but also a fun challenge. I held off a great power and their subject. We tried very hard to avoid any of the pendulum swings of employment, like those which would plague Victoria II on the regular and cause economic crashes and instability. There are certainly waves of migration, both internal and non, but it's more measured over time. To better reflect the absolute difficulty folks faced, I decided to give up everything they knew and move elsewhere. That's not as easy a decision as we assume in hindsight. Are families modelled in Victoria III? Like if you rapidly industrialise and neglect your agriculture? Inherently, famines are. Famines, not families, my apologies. Inherently, famines are, though there are also some other mechanics I'd love to go tinkering with, considering the ability to meet needs is modelled in your standard of living, which affects Pop's happiness and growth. And if you suddenly have less food to go around, well, it has societal consequences. One of my favourite things to watch a new player go on consumption taxes on grain would make a lot of money, only to realise a few days later that that's what started the revolution. Some things have immediate consequences, some are a slow burn. A question. Is it possible for more traditionalist Pops like aristocrats to maybe reform with education and become a leading reforms group? And Daniel answers this one. Individual landowner leaders can be more or less traditionalist, but they're a fundamentally reactionary group. And his revolution is over. He won decisively. He didn't even need China. After the revolution, the power of the landowners has been crushed. I'll now have the freedom to pass the laws they really hate. Gonna start by replacing hereditary bureaucrats with appointed bureaucrats. Yay, meritocracy. It's time to build railways. I'm going to need a lot of stuff. Coal, steel, motors, nothing I can rely on China to make for me. I need to build a lot of stuff fast. We'll research a better construction PM. I'm not sure what PM is. Which will increase the resources I need to construct stuff. But I have money, so it's fine. What year is it? 1845. A lot has happened in 9 years. Yeah, this is 9 years after the start of the game, and all of this has already happened. Pretty fun. Has Bavaria united Germany yet? Oh, how on point. Germany is a mess. How on point. Prussia and Austria are fighting. Classic indeed. It seems you're reforming fast. I am! To do this, I had to spend most of the time at the very edge of collapse. It's a very dangerous game. Austria and Prussia are fighting over the liberation of Krakow. Are there any more war goals active in that? Did someone just convince any allies to join via promises? Yes, but those participants have since decided they don't want to be involved in this. And Prussia is winning. Did the Prussian AI decide that this tiny city is worth a war with Austria? Is this the main war goal? AI is very not done yet. Slovakia, Krakow, and Galicia Lodomeria are now independent countries, and his railways are insanely profitable. My personal take on this is that core gameplay loop is focused on the economic and political aspects of the game. Intense military micro would be a distraction from that and would actively make the game less fun. My railway now runs all the way down my country and connects all of my cities. There are little trains on the map chugging along. This is good. I have a screenshot that is too funny not to share. His new heir to the throne. Prince Yong Yosong. The bearded baby. And the game crashed. That's what he gets from playing on the newest and latest tested build, or at least tested build. And he has determined that Korea is a fun country to play. Strongly recommended. Kind of similar to Japan, but a very different economic situation. And that's it. That is this little mini AAR that I thought was too fun not to share. I hope you enjoyed it. It's something a little different. Obviously, this is me just reading from Discord, so if that's something you liked, then fantastic. I'm glad you liked it. But yeah, I think it is worth making this video, or I very much appreciate that Daniel did this, because more than anything else, it's kind of showing what actually playing the game will be like. Going through the motions of the actual gameplay loop, rather than people just seeing the mechanics and theorizing how it will be played. This is somebody actually playing and passing on the consequences of what he's doing, and I really do appreciate that. I think that's really interesting, and I thought I should share it with you, and I hope you also found it interesting. But yeah, that's it. That's the bearded baby, the tale of the bearded baby. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.